a greeting.
We don't. I feel like we should, but then like I would feel phony saying it. Does that make sense?
It
Be like a
does.
scripted, like we say it every time. I don't know.
I won't name names, but I do have some friends who do that for their podcasts, and I hate it.
I think we've talked about it before, but I do feel some comfort when I hear it from some podcasts that I do like. It's warm, but it's weird. It's weird that Conan O'Brien says hello and welcome to Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. I know what I hit play, man. I know what I'm listening to.
Yeah, as soon as you hear little jangly acoustic guitar and then hear someone say their name and why they're Conan's friend, like, that's enough context.
Well, these days it's after like 5 ads too. They're raking in.
I would also say that they do a lot of ads at the end, which I think is strange. Because who's not just skipping that?
I'll say that if I'm behind on some podcasts and I know that the next one's gonna auto play right after it, I'll just leave it. I'll let those last ads play out.
Science right here. We just witnessed it. 2 very different takes. I get it now.
Can I share a weird thought that I had earlier today?
Please.
I'm falling a little bit behind on X-Men 97, which I've been enjoying. Also available on Disney Plus with Home Alone. And only briefly it entered my mind like, oh, I just wish I could talk about X-Men 97 on the podcast so I would have a reason to need to watch it. So I would carve out the time of my day. But we do Home Alone a minute at a time. So if I gave X-Men 97 like the same amount of attention, I'd only be a minute into X-Men 97. And I really wouldn't be solving much of a problem.
Follow-up question. Do you think Rhett Miller is a time traveler who is referencing a conversation about some newer X-Men? And he said, no, I liked the old 97s.
I don't think he's a time traveler. I think he's a time bomb.
Heyo.
And I think the 097's reference is like some sort of train thing.
No.
No.
La 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 la. I won't hear it.
You think it's more logical that Rhett Miller is a time traveler and he prefers the earlier seasons of X-Men 97 to the later ones.
I feel like that's about as much of a stretch as most of the Mandela effect things I hear.
Hear me out, bro. Hear me out. Why else would he name his band that?
And that's the Indie Rock Minute.
The Indie Rock streaming animated Marvel cartoon nostalgia trap moment.
Now, if you did music minute by minute, that'd be pretty dense.
We'd go song by song if we had some sort of music thing, right?
I think so.
If we were diving deeply into an album we both appreciate or something. Here's a fun story. I have a student teacher this semester, and student teacher's pretty cool, but he's young. He's like, early mid-20s. And today I asked him what was Weezer's last good album, just to sort of see like where he was in the Weezer acceptability timeline.
Just to drop this in there, what a great question.
And we've talked about it before, right? Like these kind of things really tell you how old you are.
Yeah, just asking someone what they remember about 9/11.
Yeah, there's these reference points. And you naming what was Weezer's last good album. And he misspoke, but he said something along the lines of, well, the Blue Album and Pinkerton aren't really good. And I was like, what? And he either misspoke or I misheard him. And he meant the inverse, that those two are the good ones. And he was wondering how much further beyond them they could go. But for a brief moment, I thought I was going to have to fail him. And I was shocked that such a person could exist. Can you imagine someone going...
Who's just like, oh, Weezer's catalog would be perfect if it weren't for Blue Album and Pinkerton.
I'm a pork and beans guy,
I do unironically like a lot of, I think, middle Weezer, I guess I'll say.
Okay.
Maladroit, Make Believe, that era. It was very strange, but I legitimately enjoyed it quite a bit.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. There are some tunes on those albums that I do appreciate. Every now and then they come out with a tune that's still pretty good.
But only the good die young. You live long enough to see yourself become the villain, or you put out a few films like John Hughes did and then just bow out.
I'm happy for Weezer. If they can collect some decent paychecks on some stadium tours every now and then, play a big festival, just keep, if they've got a nice money machine going to keep their bills paid, I'm very happy for them.
I'd even go so far as to say I'm jealous.
There are worse bands you could be in than current day Weezer.
Yeah, you have to play the same song 1,000 times, and on the 1,001 on that performance, you have to pretend like it's the first time, because for somebody it might be their first time hearing it.
Yeah, that's tough, right?
And that feels tedious. But then you go, wait, I do things way more tedious than that for money. So who's the fool? Who's more foolish? The fool or the fool who follows him? Different film. Although people do sometimes talk about the South Bend Shovel Slayer being like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Alec Guinness would have made a good Old Man Marley had this been made in a different decade.
If only Rhett Miller were here to time travel with us.
Please, Rhett Miller, please take us back. Bishop style.
Okay, so do you want to do a recap of minute 015?
Sure, we're looking at 14:00 to 15:00.
That's what we're looking at.
We get the beginning of it is Kate realizing that she has slept in, that the whole family, the whole house has slept in. They wake up in a panic.
I thought you were going to say Kate has realized she missed her calling as a hand model.
We talked about it last episode, but if you're just now checking in, it's some of the best hand acting going on. You pick up the whole clock and let it go in a sense of flashing 12. What's going on here? Let me grab the watch that's on the clock and pull it to the bed. It's just a lot of good stuff going on. But quick recap. So they wake up. They slept in. It's a scramble in the house. There's classical music playing and people are still in their pajamas. And then little Mitch Murphy comes over from across the street. He asks the shuttle driver a few questions. We're back in. Kate's asking about the passports, asking Heather to do a head count. And then we're back in the shuttle van, which Mitch Murphy and one of the drivers, right? I miss anything?
Not one thing.
All right. Well, that was minute 15.
That's it.
Go check out the new Old 97s album, which is actually pretty darn good. And we'll see you next week.
If it's new old 97s, isn't it just 97s?
At some point, you would think that kind of like how the rappers have to stop calling themselves Young something eventually, or Lil.
Yeah, didn't we get a big Bow Wow at some point?
Big Bow Wow. I'll have a large Bow Wow.
Oh, sorry, a venti Bow Wow. So what I think is some of the best acting is blurring the lines between slapstick and very real. So when she's like, Peter, and they kind of
they
are
both
falling
sort of spill out of the bed and look at each other, which is such an unnatural movement, but it works.
And when they look at each other, you can feel the cogs turning. You can feel the wheels turning. And they do such a good job of processing what happened. And then they both come to the realization at the same time. And the way that they say it, the way they deliver it, the way that they physically kind of move.
Yeah, John Hurt puts his hand in the air like, I know exactly what you're going to say. I'm going to say it at the same time with you. It's so beautiful. I agree.
Just flawless. Just flawless. We slept in. That's great acting, great direction, all that. Like from the page to something that just hits that hard, there's a lot in what is essentially one line.
Incredibly relatable too. How many couples have woken up and realized that they've slept in?
Yes. It's usually like a light beating. It's like a, hey, hey, hey. And you're just like,
Yeah. But for them to be on the same page at the same time is a nice slapsticky kind of moment. I love the time from when Kate grabs the watch to when she springs out of bed, because it's not like this slow realization. Like you could have had her like looking at the watch, scratching her head, looking around and stuff. But like it's all under the covers. You don't even see them, and then they spring out. It's really great. It's timed really well before she springs out of bed, and the amount of time between Peter and we slept in is exactly what it needs to be. So good.
So good. Take a shot.
I'm drinking sweetened tea out of my Boston Bruins mug.
I am drinking Spinny D, straight from the can. So just to call back a bit to, I don't know if it was so much last episode or maybe the one before, in this high-speed shot where everyone's kind of going around, we do get to see Fuller has been in his jammies, and it's not clear.
No evidence at all that he has wet himself.
He doesn't move in a way as if he did.
He comes down the stairs and like Frank kind of meets him at the bottom of the stairs and they walk into another room. Yeah.
That's about it.
We don't see any sort of like bedwetting evidence.
But he could also be an early wetter, right? So he does a 9:30, 10 o'clock wet. And by we slept in o'clock,
maybe
it's nice and dry.
Very fair. It's a good shot of like sort of the whole family scrambling around. It's done in sort of like that time-lapsey sped up footage kind of thing. No one seems to be in a hurry. If this footage is sped up, they really are just sort of like walking around the house. You still don't see suitcases. No one's like sort of half getting dressed. That comes a little bit later. Like these first moments are just, we're all walking into different rooms in our pajamas.
Well, because they're all just processing it too, right? Like, I will say I'm surprised no one had an alarm that wasn't plugged into the wall.
I don't know. Like, are those, I mean, if you have your home alarm, like, how often are people using like a battery operated alarm clock in their home? Like maybe Frank and Leslie brought one. Maybe someone has a digital watch with an alarm set on it.
I'm thinking, more like two varieties. One being, like you say, the battery one, because I think a lot of people with like travel alarms, especially if you take one when you are in a hotel and you don't really want to fiddle with theirs, you can bring one that's battery, but also the classics, the wind alarms, the one that is still on the icon when you think about
Why
alarms.
Didn't they just set an alarm on their cell phone? It is weird that like the onus of waking up on time is on Kate and Peter. Like, as the owners of this house, no, everyone, we'll wake you up. Don't worry about it. We've got an alarm clock. Everything's fine. And none of these people naturally wake up before 8 o'clock. No one.
And when the sun is very clearly out, this isn't like midnight. They're not having to get up for
this isn't a 3 a.m., 4 a.m. situation. This is, again, we talked about that before, but like we're getting up, we're leaving early. We have to leave at 8 a.m. It's like, that's not so early for a flight, friend.
I wonder if that's a err on the side of family film, because as a child, you're like 8 o'clock.
Well, it also makes those shots when they're getting in the van and stuff a lot easier to shoot, because you can shoot it in daylight. You don't have to do it with the sun down.
Yeah, you can shoot from like 8 to 4.
Yeah, some nice union hours.
Ideal. One thing I will say, which is giving credit to some combination of props, continuity, whoever else, whatever. I noticed that, like you say, we have like one bag that comes, I think, at first and is sort of tossed toward the front door. But Leslie, I saw, was holding mouthwash. And I do like the idea that the things that are not packed yet are the kind of toiletries and things that you would use right before leaving. So it's not like she's bringing a bunch of things that would clearly already be packed. It's just like toiletries and things. So that's kind of an eye for detail that I can appreciate.
It's the stuff that you would keep out for the morning,
right,
before you pack it away and get on the plane. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a morning of sort of thing.
Can we talk about Mitch Murphy? He's maybe my favorite character in the movie.
I was just waiting for you to do it. I didn't want to steal your thunder because I know this is a few ticks down from what was the last good Weezer album, but I think someone's take on Mitch Murphy, I think, would be really telling as well.
What, like how they feel about him?
Who doesn't love Mitch Murphy?
I think he's a great character. I think he's portrayed wonderfully. This actor's name is Jeffrey Wiseman. Is that right?
Yeah, the dude from Overboard.
One of the kids, one of the bratty kids.
He was give me a sec. Yeah, give me a second. I don't know, Spot.
Okay.
I don't know. He was a greasy little kid. I forget, but I can't think of him anything else. I don't know if he's done much else.
The trivia online, which is all 100% true, says that he also auditioned to be Kevin and didn't get it and ended up with this role. And in the script that I have, he does not have all these lines. There's just a boy coming over saying hi. I think he does have the "bring me back something French" line, but all that other stuff is not in there. So they knew they were working with a superstar, and they let him play. They let him have a little bit more than what was in the draft.
I love that. So his only line was the
yeah. There
one?
might be a couple other little things in there, but all of this like inane conversation about where he's going, where they're going. These vans get good gas mileage. Like none of that stuff is in the script. So I love that they carved out a little room for this kid. It's such a beautiful little scene that's almost completely removed from the rest of this movie. He becomes functionally a very important element in their leaving Kevin behind. But this stuff with him and the van driver is so good to me. You know what it is? It's like you're aware of Macbeth.
Is that on Netflix?
Yeah, you should check it out. In the middle of Macbeth, like it's all gloom and spooky witches and murder and conspiring to murder and wringing your hands over whether or not you should murder. And in the middle of all that, there's this character called the Porter, and he's just like this drunk dude who sort of like keeps the castle. He's like the janitor basically, and he's just drunk and he's just talking all sorts of nonsense, and it's completely removed from the play, and people are just ready. It's just time for a laugh. And here it's time for a laugh. We just saw the big fight between Kevin and Kate. We saw like this plot stuff of going on of them waking up late and being in a rush and sort of setting up those dominoes for them, to justify leaving Kevin behind. And then here comes Mitch Murphy to just drone on and on about how they're going to Orlando when actually they're going to pick up their grandma in Missouri first and do these vans get good gas mileage.
That's actually where it was really hard for me to suspend my disbelief, because he called it Missouri. If your grandma lives there, you're calling it Missouri.
I don't think so.
I don't know. Ask Mitch Murphy.
I will.
I do appreciate that he's asking some questions that we as an audience might be asking. Like, is it cold in France? Because if you're a kid, you don't really know about hemispheres.
He's got so many questions. You guys going on vacation? Do you know the McAllisters are going to France? I love that sequence because he recognizes this person as going somewhere, but he's in the McAllisters' driveway. So he's asking them if he knows where the McAllisters are going, but he's asking them if they're going somewhere.
It's so innocent.
Yeah, he can't piece together that these guys are picking up the McAllisters and taking them to the airport.
Another this reads as a different time, but I actually like it, is I think we get a similar thing later, but the first gentleman that he interacts with at the end of his bit there goes, "Gee, kid, I don't know, hit the road." It feels very 1950s for someone to say "gee, kid."
That accent isn't doing him any favors.
I'm surprised we don't hear people saying "golly." But for some reason, and I think it might be what you're pointing to here, is that this scene itself just allows a bit of an exhale.
Yeah.
So we just kind of go along with it.
In a perfectly edited sequence, we get that guy saying, hit the road, and Mitch Murphy does not hit any roads. We go back inside for a minute, right? And then it comes back. And not only has he not hit the road, he's practically sitting in this guy's lap, just checking out the van.
Which I suppose we should save because I think Mitch Murphy gets a full 3 minutes, maybe? Because he's definitely in the next minute.
He's definitely in the next minute. I don't know if Bring Me Back Something French. Well, I mean, we'll have to see. We obviously don't.
We'll have to see.
We don't plan these in advance.
This is how exciting this journey is.
He's like this dumb version of Kevin. Like he's got the same kind of spunk and audacity, but it's not sarcastic. It's not witty. It's not even especially charming. But he's gonna sit in your lap and ask you if these vans have 4-wheel drive. He's just a different mode of nuisance.
Yeah, I suppose we're seeing what is true of 8-year-olds in this universe, and then what is true of Kevin specifically. So Mitch Murphy is giving us this is how all 8-year-olds are.
Do you think he and Kevin are friends?
I think Mitch thinks so.
Yeah, I see that. Kevin doesn't talk about any friends. He talks about a kid at school who got beat up for wearing a sweater, right? Much later. That's the closest we get to him talking about like a friend.
I mean, they are socialized in some sense because Peter calls...
Yeah, they clear out their address book. So they're calling everybody on the street. They know people on the street, but does Kevin have any friends?
Well, Kevin's been to that house before because he knows, and I think we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves just for context, but
the end of the movie?
Yeah, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen this yet and who's just following along in real time.
What a wild way to watch this.
Can you imagine watching it this way for the first time?
That'd be great.
Maybe
we'll do that.
I'd pay to have that feeling, sort of what's that Jim Carrey movie? The
Liar, Liar.
Eternal Sunshine. Like if I could somehow temporarily delete Home Alone after we've completed this series and then go back and watch it along with.
There's got to be someone out there who has never seen it before, and we can convince them that this is the way to do it. Watch it minute by minute, once a week with us.
Something in me tells me that they'll really appreciate it.
That's your vanity.
No, that's my appreciation for the people who made this perfect film.
Yeah, I would be tempted to keep watching. It'd be hard to stop at a minute and go, all right, now let me take in this podcast.
Fair. So, Heather, do a head count.
Nice transition, Jerod. This moment of them like coming down the stairs and people are going up the stairs or crossing things, and Kate asking Heather to do a head count just as they're passing each other. It does show us that Kate's got her act together, right? Like she's thinking of all the things that really need to get thought of. She is doing the things that would normally keep you from forgetting anybody. And if it wasn't for a little bit of Christmas magic from last minute, like everything would have been fine. And then she's asking for the passports and the tickets. Jerod, when you have wet paper, where do you put it to dry off?
I guess on the roof, maybe.
Okay.
In the oven.
Okay. Maybe out on like a deck. Or
maybe like in a doghouse.
Okay.
Or like I don't know. I'm just thinking of all the other absurd things that are still somehow less absurd than the microwave.
You've got wet documents. And Peter put them in the microwave to dry off.
So let's call it 70-30. I'm holding out that 30% that he was actually joking. Because it does read like he did that. And I'm just flabbergasted.
It's a generous ratio.
Are you thinking 80-20? Are we going full Pareto principle?
I think he had to put him somewhere. The line of thinking makes some sort of sense. Like microwaves equal warm. Let me put these in the warm place. If you got wet plane tickets, you're getting a hairdryer out, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I do like that he's like buttoning up his like shirt sleeves as he's doing this. I like that detail. Or putting on his watch. What is he doing? He's doing something with his wrist.
Yeah, some kind of stage business where he's clearly fiddling with putting himself together while saying it.
It's good acting.
I am now trying to put myself in that position of I have wet passports and tickets, some of which, unbeknownst to me, have been thrown in the garbage. I do think hairdryer or something of the like, but I think just putting it somewhere sunny, not to be confused with sunny, but sunny. It just feels like the last place.
Yeah, it's a weird spot. But whatever. It's what we got.
It's what we got. Love is what I've got. And then we cut back to our boy. He lives across the street. Depending on how you cut this, he only really gets like half a line in.
Yeah, he's not even
before we end this minute
with his first question here.
So I'm going to make an executive call and say that we will push that into minute 16.
It's a fair thing to do. Mitch Murphy is worth a little bit of extra attention anyway, so I'll allow him the 2/3 of a second that he can get from this previous minute here.
Quite literally rollover minutes. So if I were to do my best summary of what I believe you think is the lesson of this minute, I'd say that it needs more murder.
Oh, you're referring to the whole Macbeth thing. I think you missed my point. I think...
No. There's a funny guy in Macbeth or whatever, but
Jerod,
murder.
Perhaps I didn't articulate it well. Okay.
Oh, no. Sorry. Like, there's a funny guy in the Scottish play, but murder.
There you go. Thank you. It's rude to say it on a podcast. The Scottish podcast.
Any plugs?
Oh, I have an Instagram account. We made an Instagram account, Jerod.
All right. Now, what is...
It's the Home Alones. It's the Home Alones at the Home Alones.
No, I was going to ask, what is Instagram?
Well, a long time ago, there was this guy at an Ivy League school who was mad that he couldn't get dates. And he learned how to code. And he made a company that was fine until it got evil, like all companies. And now there are stories and reels, and middle-aged men cannot tell the difference between the two. But in order to be culturally relevant in any way at all, you have to have an account on the Lonely College Boys applications. So here we are, at the Home Alones.
At the Home Alones, plural.
That's correct. It's not the Homes Alones, because what kind of idiot would spell his own band's name incorrectly on his Instagram account and not notice it for multiple days? Not me. Okay.
Last question that I have for you, confusingly. If those took place today, which characters would be on Instagram?
All characters.
You think Fuller's on Instagram?
I think Fuller's on Instagram. I think Fuller is unboxing eggs with toys inside and making bank doing it. He's got some sort of weird, like, child autism train thing going on where he, like, he just sort of, like, pushes trains through tunnels live on Instagram and makes money that way.
Is Old Man Marley on Instagram?
Ooh, he is not on Instagram. I venture to say that the Wet Bandits are only on Instagram for the mild pornography. You got to think that the Wet Bandits and Uncle Frank really, Aunt Leslie's probably none too pleased with Uncle Frank's list of Instagram followings. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, but he probably doesn't even know that she can see that. Like, he doesn't know that that's public.
Well, we are sort of assuming that, like, these people have lived in a time. They haven't been just transported 30 years into the future.
No. Yeah, they all would be pretty well versed, right? Like, you don't get transported into the future a la Rhett Miller, and then you just become like an Instagram star, like Fuller. Yeah, he grew up with it. Because he would be a digital native, right?
Who's been red pilled by the algorithm? Who's, like, really fallen down into some, like, dark holes, who's like flat Earth, Illuminati.
Is it not Frank?
Yeah, Frank. Is it Buzz?
I do think Rod is doing the like alpha male thing.
He's got some incel kind of weird Joe Rogan-y kind of stuff going. But that's what he and Buzz like talk about.
Yeah.
That's like,
yeah, they're like, dude, Andrew Tate did this thing and it's because women are dumb.
Yeah, they both agree on that point.
That's like as much as I know about that. It's all the most alpha of males that tune in.
Yeah. Heather's got a cool Instagram, I bet. Like Heather's got cool
she's
stuff.
famous.
Yeah, she's doing cool
like,
stuff.
She has 1 million followers. And no one else in that house who's older than her understands the significance of that.
Right. And they're mad that she isn't going to college anymore. That's where we are. At
the Home Alones.
Yeah. I don't really know what to put there. So go follow us and tell us what to put there. I got a toddler. I got dogs. That's usually what I put on the old Instagram. But for the band, for the podcast, I don't know.
Open to ideas. But for now, this is our scripted outro. Signing off from Winnetka, Illinois. I'm Kevin McAllister.
And I'm also that.
Say goodnight, Kevin.
Good night, Kevin.